The first person who I'm going to bring to the stage is a big part of the reason why we're here. She has been not only influential in the amount of money that she's donated to the public school system, but really in what she's donated in terms of idea and brain power and just willpower in trying to get things done and do things just a little bit differently. So she again is with the Partnership for Los Angeles Schools. I want to bring up to the stage right now, Melanie Lundquist. Okay, Melanie. All right, so let's just get down. We'll get the dollar figures out of the way. I mean, you've donated quite a bit of money. You were obviously the co-founder of Partnership for LA Schools, which began with an endowment that you made, including some of the subsequent donations. It stands as probably the second largest donation to the public school system by an individual donor. And that's very impressive. That was 10, 11 years ago or so. Now, when you look back, with the benefit of hindsight, is it too early? Is it too premature to really talk about whether that was money well spent?
Not at all.
Okay.
It was money very well spent and continues to be very well spent. We recently invested in an impact report, 60-page impact report that gave us a lot of feedback and information. We also know our graduation rates. For example, Mendez High School, when we started, 42% graduation rate, now at 90% graduation rate. Jordan High School was a very low performing school when we took it. It is in the first year of being with the partnership, we ended up that high school became the most improved high school in the state of California. Suspension rates. Our suspension rates were 22% when we started, and we're now down to 1%.
Okay, well, that's pretty impressive. As someone who has gotten suspended a couple times when I was a kid, but I'm here, so
that's right. See, it works.
Okay, but that's an important component of this too. I mean, we talk about graduation rates, but we also want to know what happens to these kids once they graduate. Are they going out to college or into the professional world with actual skills that are going to actually make them successful? How are you measuring that?
We're measuring the metrics, again, through the graduation rates, suspension rates, and looking at our impact report. I can tell you that many of our students are now at Ivy League colleges throughout the entire country, which is very, very rewarding. These are students who never even dreamed they could go to college, let alone being at an Ivy League.
When you talk to these, not only the kids that's through the partnership and the schools that are through your partnership, but when you talk to the teachers themselves, what type of feedback do they give you with regards to how the partnership is involved in the school system? And it is a little bit of a dual structure with the way that it's set up with regards to the rest of the public school system. What type of feedback do you get from the teachers?
We do a survey each year asking for feedback and satisfaction reports, and we score very, very high on that. The teachers are getting a tremendous amount of coaching and professional development, and that was not the case prior. And so they are very happy. In the beginning, they weren't happy because for decades they've been promised so many things and nothing has ever shown up. And so why would they think we were any different? But we are different, and we have earned their trust.
So every person that has tried to sort of reform the school system, whether it's through philanthropy or even within the system as a superintendent or administrator, has run into this issue where they've gotten pushback either from parents or politicians. When you started the partnership, you had a huge ally in Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa. Not everyone has that type of ally. They're walking into the lion's den, essentially. So what advice do you give sort of the would-be Melanie Lundquist out there for how they can navigate whatever their particular community and school system
Well, now that it's 12 years later, I can say, go into the lion's den. Will you get eaten alive? Well, maybe, but it's worth it. It's worth it. It's so worth it. Mayor Sylvester Turner from Houston sent a delegation of 9 people to Los Angeles for 2 days, met with the partnership and LAUSD, and he had this delegation go around the country and look at models of transformation and reform. They settled on the partnership. It helps the most vulnerable students in the most vulnerable communities. And so Joan Sullivan, our CEO, and an incredible team, her incredible team, we have visited Houston and Austin as well, and I'm glad to say that some of those folks are here today. And Mayor Houston has said that he sees that this is a model that can be translated to Houston, and it was always my dream from day one that this become a national model of transformation, and we're doing it for $675 per student per year, which is pretty amazing.
How do you, well, then let's talk about that dollar figure, because I think we know that the per student cost isn't always a measure of whether it's going to succeed.
No,
We've seen per student costs higher than that in schools that had a failure rate that was less, that was greater than yours. But how do you arrive then at a formula where you can kind of keep those costs reasonable and still achieve success? Because so many people just want to throw money at the problem, but it goes beyond money.
The partnership is based on 3 principles, and those 3 principles are capacity, scalability, and sustainability. So by working inside the system as we do with the district, we face the obstacles. You can't change the system unless you work in the system. And we look at the obstacles that we come up against, and we find solutions for those obstacles. On occasion, we find a solution that's really, really good, but it's too expensive. We have to make this sustainable so that other districts around this nation can use this model, can be replicated, and we are in the process of doing a playbook for other districts around the nation.
Some people look at your level of donations and other wealthy people out there, you know, like a Mark Zuckerberg, and they sort of question, why do we need billionaire benefactors to fund these changes in public schools, where the idea of public, it should be taxpayer funded? How do you respond to that criticism? Because it's not always clear cut as to what the intentions of the benefactor is.
I understand exactly what you're saying. I think in some cases that's probably a very true statement. Others, it's not. But I believe that the benefactors have to be trusted, and that's an advantage to working inside the system too. So the mayor was a profile encouraged to start this, and I think that that's part of, goes back to your previous question about the politics of the whole thing, because people have made it very political. It really shouldn't be.
Yeah, it should be. But it almost always is. I mean, you go
It
from
always
city to
is.
city.
It always is.
So,
It
but one of the
always-
reasons why it's political is because it isn't always about money. I mean, there is a sort of a structural issues you're dealing with in these school systems, whether they're political, whether they're social, economic, racial. These are all factors that sort of drives the politics in one direction or another. And so when you're taking your model and you're saying you try to scale it and move it to other communities around the country, how do you think that can be done when the politics of LA may be different from the politics of Houston and the politics of Chicago and New York?
Well, and that's one thing that the mayor of Houston said to us, is that he can see how this model can be translated to Houston. So it's probably going to come in a slightly different form, but the money that we have for education in this country is just not adequate anymore. Out of 35 industrialized nations, United States of America is 30 in math and 19th in science. And so it's about the public-private partnerships. I call it P4, public-private philanthropic partnerships. And I know what you're saying as far as the trust level. That trust level isn't always there, makes it harder. And I've never said this was going to be easy.
Right.
I always felt this was going to be very, very tough to do, which is one of the reasons I really like it, because I like tough problems.
Well, you get a lot of credit for being involved, not just, again, with the dollars.
Right.
At some point, though, you will move on. And how certain are you, or what have you done to, I guess, ensure that Partnership for Los Angeles Schools and all the other endeavors that you're in, that can be sustainable once you're not there agitating for the betterment?
Right. We've been very, very fortunate. In the beginning, it was pretty much just us. But since that time, we have been very fortunate in our effort, my husband and I, and we've been joined by philanthropists like Ballmer and Wasserman and Broad, and institutions like Weingart and Gates and Kellogg and Carnegie. Stellar list of funders. And success breeds success, so they see we're doing it.
Yeah.
And once you've been in business for 12 years, it's easier for people to say, well, they are having success. Maybe we should look at this. So, and I'm so glad Barbara Dalio is going to be speaking today, because Barbara is an outstanding advocate and works the same way I do, from the inside out. And you know, and the other thing too is you have to make a long-term commitment, really long-term commitment.
Yeah.
Mayor de Blasio just ended the referendum initiative after 3 years.
Yeah.
That's not long enough.
Yeah.
You've got to, we're 10 years in. Our first 10 years are over. We're into our second 10 years. And if necessary, and I know Joan Sullivan will love hearing this because she's our CEO, and there very well may need to be a third 10 years. I'll be 100, but that's okay.
All right. All right, Melanie. Well, we're going to leave it there. I thank you. We're going to hear from Joan, and we're going to hear from Barbara a little bit later. But I want to thank Melanie Lundquist for joining us on stage from Partnership for Los Angeles Schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Romaine.